Well, if there was any more proof needed that times are tough in retailing, then Wesfarmers' third quarter sales figures sealed the deal. While Coles' supermarket business is doing better than Woolworths, growth is slowing and Target's sales are actually shrinking. I spoke to Wesfarmers chief Richard Goyder from his Perth headquarters. Richard Goyder, 5 years ago you put in place a 5-year plan to turn around Coles, but it still feels like a work in progress. Why is that?
I think we always said that it would take 5 years to effect a turnaround, but as I said, we've always said it would take longer actually to generate the sort of returns we want from Coles. This is a project that'll go on for many years, I think, Alan, because it's a significant business with some significant opportunities now to continue to improve it. But if you look back over the last 4 and a bit years, I think we've made really massive improvements to a business that was on its knees, and in any form you like to look at it, customer numbers, transactions, value to customers, which I think we're leading on, and we're starting to deliver much better returns to our shareholders as well. But there's a long way to go. But
are you a bit disappointed that it's not further along after 5 years?
I think in terms of Coles, we often look at where we are compared to where we thought in 2007, and we're at least on track with where we thought we'd be on Coles. We're ahead of where we thought we would be on Kmart. We're now a little behind on Target because Target's come back a bit, and we're right where we thought we'd be on Officeworks. So generally we're going pretty well.
Well, as you say, Coles is doing pretty well, but Target is not doing that well. In fact, it's in a bit of strife. Is it caught between Kmart at the discount end and the higher cost department stores?
Well, firstly, I don't think it's going that badly. I mean, Target is making probably more money than any department store in the country, and if anyone's doing better than it this year, it'll be Kmart. So between Kmart and Target, we've probably got the best two performers. And Target is an iconic brand. I think it's got a very strong position between Myer, David Jones and Kmart and Big W.
In the latest period, you had 3.6% price deflation in Coles, and 2/3 of that seems to be external and 1/3 of it seems to be driven by you internally. So how long will either of those things go on?
Well, the first thing about the price deflation, Alan, is that there was significant fresh produce deflation in the quarter, and we had that was about a 25% reduction in fresh produce, which was great for consumers, obviously, but also because of our marketing initiatives, good for our suppliers. And that's a seasonal thing because of abundance of supply and a reduction in price compared to the previous year when there was a shortage of supply due to floods on the eastern seaboard. And that's mitigating a bit now. Deflation in fresh produce is more like 10% rather than 25% in the first quarter. And the other is we've done a significant amount of work in Coles to reduce our costs so that we can pass those cost reductions on to our customers. And we expect to continue to do that, particularly through the supply chain efficiencies that we can put in place. And I think that's great news for consumers generally. And it's also good for the community, Alan, because the latest CPI data, which had a 2.1% reduction in food prices, is obviously very good for a reduction in interest rates, and Coles has been leading the price charge. So I think we're doing a good job for our customers, but more broadly a good job for the Australian economy.
Well, the price deflation that you're bringing about is really hurting suppliers. They're really complaining a lot. I mean, how much responsibility do you take for preserving the Australian food industry?
Well, I feel when you run a large company like Wesfarmers, and within that large businesses like Coles and Bunnings, that you have a significant responsibility, and our responsibility obviously is to all our stakeholders, our shareholders, our customers, but also our suppliers, and we deal with our suppliers fairly openly and honestly, and I'd have to say, Alan, the vast majority of Coles suppliers since we acquired the business are much happier now than they were 4.5 years ago, because they're getting much more volume through the business, much greater certainty. There are always some winners and losers when you're in business and when you're trying to enhance the offer for your customers, and sometimes it's the losers that make the noise. But we're doing a lot of work internally to reduce costs. We expect our suppliers to be doing the same. We expect our suppliers to be innovating.
How important is a rate cut next week?
I think it's important from a confidence point of view. I just think it's surprising in Australia at the moment. Our economy actually is in reasonably good shape, and you know from the work you do that in global terms Australia is in very good shape. And yet there's a distinct lack of confidence here, and that affects consumer sentiment. And so I think a rate cut would be good in terms of getting positive consumer sentiment. And I think the high dollar is having an impact on a number of businesses. And indeed, I think it's one of the things that's impacting a number of our suppliers. And so a rate cut, I think, would be helpful for a number of sectors of the economy, and I hope it comes.
How big should it be?
Well, I leave that to the Reserve Bank. But, I think a downward trend in rates would be good, and easing of monetary policy over time, hopefully, if with the inflation under control, would be a good thing.
Well, would you like to see a 0.5% rate cut next week?
Well, I think that would have more of an impact, but I wouldn't bet my house on it.
Thanks very much for joining us, Richard Goyder.
Thanks, Alan.